The rain had started just as the shouting did. It wasn't heavy yet, just a mist crawling over the parking lot of Hudson Luxury Motors, coating the glass doors and the rows of polished cars that gleamed beneath the dealership lights. The night air carried the scent of gasoline and wet asphalt, and through the haze, the neon sign flickered like a heartbeat. Hudson Motors, since 1987. Michael stood outside, his jacket damp, his reflection staring back from the showroom window. A man who looked calm on the surface, but behind the eyes burned something sharp, controlled, dangerous. Inside, people were still whispering. Phones out. Security watching. He hadn't said much yet, not after what happened earlier that day. But the silence around him now felt like gravity, heavy and waiting. Then he finally stepped forward, the door creaked open, and the sound of his shoes echoed across the marble floor. "Y'all remember me?" he asked, his voice low but steady. Every head turned. The same guard who had thrown him out that morning froze. The salesman's smirk vanished. The manager, pale as the walls, whispered something that no one could quite hear. And then Michael said it, the line that would break the city's internet by morning. "You don't need to check my credit anymore. I own this place." But to understand how the quiet man in the rain became the storm in that showroom, you have to go back 3 days earlier, to when he was just another stranger walking through those same glass doors. It was a Tuesday morning in Raleigh, North Carolina. The sky was the color of tin, and cicadas hummed faintly from somewhere past the lot. Michael had woken early, long before the traffic, long before the city started buzzing. He'd spent the last few months staying low, working quietly from home after leaving Los Angeles. He wasn't the kind of man to flaunt wealth, never had been. His car had been stolen 2 weeks prior, and for the first time in years, he decided to buy one in person. He'd chosen Hudson Motors because he'd grown up nearby, and because something about that old dealership, with its brick facade and faded banners, reminded him of simpler times. He wore jeans, a dark hoodie, and sneakers. No jewelry, no watch. Just a folded note in his pocket with the name of the model he wanted, the same car his father used to dream about owning when he was alive. Inside, the air smelled like new leather and lemon polish. Salesmen drifted around like sharks in suits, eyes sharp, smiles sharper. Michael walked up to a red Mercedes-AMG GT sitting under a spotlight and ran his hand along the hood, tracing the reflection of his fingers over the paint. He could hear laughter from the office nearby, the kind of laughter that stings, that tells you it's about you. Then came the voice, smooth but coated in disdain. "Sir, this area is for clients with appointments." Michael turned. A tall salesman in a navy suit approached, clipboard in hand, smile polite but cold. "Name's Todd," the man said. "Can I help you with something affordable today?" Michael's jaw tightened, but he kept his tone calm. "Just looking," he said. "Maybe for that one." He nodded toward the AMG. Todd's smirk widened, like he'd just been told a joke. "That one's 300 grand, sir," he said, his tone dripping with mock respect. "Maybe you'd like to see our pre-owned selection around back?" The laughter from the office grew louder. Another salesman, younger, whispered something to his colleague. "Probably lost." Michael ignored them. He asked to see the car's interior, to hear the engine, but Todd barely moved. "We only do test drives for verified buyers," he said. "You got a credit file on you?" Michael smiled faintly. "Don't need one." Todd's smile cracked. "Everyone needs one." Then came the line that would burn into Michael's memory forever. "Look, buddy, we don't do charity rides. Maybe the Nissan lot down the street's more your range." Michael didn't react. Not yet. He just nodded slowly and walked toward the exit. But as he reached the door, another voice, deeper, meaner, called out. "Hey!" The security guard, a big man in his 50s, blocked his path. "You heard Todd. Out." Michael looked at him, eyes calm. "I was already leaving." The guard stepped closer. "Good. Don't come back, boy." The word hung there, ugly, sharp, and deliberate. Conversations in the showroom stopped mid-sentence. Todd shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Michael looked around at the silent faces watching, then at the guard. His voice was soft, measured, but each word landed like weight. "I'll come back when the time's right." Then he turned and walked out into the sunlight. For most people, that would have been the end. But Michael wasn't most people. That evening, he sat in his rented home at the edge of town, scrolling through his phone, the memory of that day looping in his head like a scratched record. He wasn't angry for himself, not exactly. He'd faced worse in Hollywood boardrooms, worse in auditions where smiles hid eyes. No, what gnawed at him was the way it felt, the way silence fell in that showroom, how nobody said a word when the guard used that slur, how even the laughter before it felt rehearsed, like they'd done it before. He thought about his father again, a man who taught him to always keep receipts, not in money, but in principle. "Don't get even," his father used to say. "Get it right." Michael opened his laptop and clicked on a folder marked Holdings. Few people knew just how much he'd built over the past decade: his production company, his investments, his equity stakes in real estate and automotive startups. One of those startups, MBJ Auto Group, had quietly acquired several struggling dealerships across the Southeast. He hadn't looked at the Raleigh branch's paperwork in months. Now, he pulled up the files. And there it was, Hudson Luxury Motors LLC, listed under one of his subsidiaries. He stared at the screen for a long time. Then, slowly, a smile crossed his face. The next morning, the city woke to a drizzle. Todd showed up late, nursing his coffee, same polished arrogance on his face. The guard, Lester, leaned on the counter, telling stories to a few mechanics. A young intern was sweeping the floor, trying not to be noticed. Around 10, a black SUV pulled into the lot. The windows were tinted. The engine purred low. Nobody recognized it. Michael stepped out, dressed in a tailored gray suit this time, no hoodie, no sneakers. His eyes were steady, his posture quiet but commanding. Todd spotted him from across the showroom and frowned. "You again?" he said, striding over. "Didn't I tell you?" He stopped when Michael handed him an envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, embossed with the letterhead of MBJ Auto Holdings. Todd's eyes scanned it, confusion spreading. Lester approached, his tone rough. "Everything okay, boss?" Todd didn't answer. He just looked up at Michael, pale. "This says you own the place?" Michael finished. "Yeah, I do." Lester laughed, assuming it was a joke. "Man, don't play." Then he looked at Todd's face and stopped laughing. The color drained from his cheeks. "Wait, what?" Within an hour, the general manager, the one who'd been laughing the loudest the day before, arrived from his office upstairs. His tie was crooked, his voice shaky. "Mr. Jordan, there must be some mistake." Michael gestured toward the desk. "No mistake. You can check with corporate. Papers transferred 6 weeks ago." The manager glanced at the file, then at the signatures. His mouth went dry. "Sir, we had no idea." "No," Michael interrupted softly. "You didn't care." He walked around the showroom slowly, taking in the cars, the glossy floors, the fake smiles. Every step echoed like a verdict. Customers were starting to notice, phones subtly lifting to record. The air was thick with embarrassment, tension, and disbelief. Michael turned to Lester. "Yesterday, you put your hands on me. Today, you work for me." Lester's eyes widened. "Sir, I save it." Michael's tone was calm but final. Get your things. Todd swallowed hard. Mr. Jordan, we didn't mean, you meant every word, Michael said. That's what makes it worse. The intern, still sweeping near the back, froze. He looked at Michael with wide eyes. Sir, I'm sorry for how they treated you, he said quietly. It wasn't right. Michael looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. What's your name? Eli, sir. You're promoted, Eli. Starting today. The room went silent again. Cameras were recording now. The moment had gone viral before it was even over. The man they'd thrown out standing at the center of their humiliation, speaking with the calm authority of justice itself. But just as Michael began to walk toward the office to finalize the transition, a sudden commotion erupted at the front door. Two men in suits entered, representatives from the parent corporation. One of them, tall and severe, carried a briefcase. The other whispered something to the manager, who turned pale again. Michael felt the shift instantly, that invisible current of corporate tension. The tall man approached him. Mr. Jordan, he said coolly, I'm Richard Carver, corporate counsel for Hudson Holdings. We've been trying to reach you. There's an issue with your acquisition. Michael studied him, his calm beginning to thin. What kind of issue? Ownership dispute, Carver said. Apparently, the former owner filed an injunction yesterday. Claims your purchase violated certain contractual terms. The room murmured. Todd looked relieved. Lester smirked faintly, as if he'd just glimpsed a second chance. Michael stayed silent for a long time, his jaw tightening. The rain outside had turned into a steady downpour, pattering against the glass like a clock counting down. He glanced around the showroom, the faces, the tension, the judgment. He knew what they were thinking, that the storm had passed, that he'd lose again. Then, slowly, he smiled. Then I guess we'll find out, he said. But you should all remember something. He turned to the employees, his voice steady but fierce. When you decide someone's worth by what they wear, you better pray they never get the chance to prove you wrong. The thunder cracked outside, shaking the windows. The manager flinched. The guard stepped back. And as the rain poured harder, the first reporter's car pulled up to the lot. Someone had leaked the video already. By nightfall, the internet would be ablaze with the headline. They kicked him out for being too poor. Turns out, he owned the dealership. But what no one knew yet, not the employees, not the corporate suits, not the millions watching online, was that the injunction wasn't fake. And what Michael found when he read the fine print later that night would change everything. Because Hudson Motors wasn't the only thing he owned anymore, and someone, somewhere, wanted to make sure that ownership never became public. Under the relentless buzz of fluorescent lights, the next morning at Hudson Motors felt like standing inside a pressure cooker about to blow. The rain from the previous night had turned the lot into a mirror of water and oil, reflecting the sky in smeared silver patches. Michael B. Jordan sat alone in the manager's office, the same one that had once been used to laugh at customers behind glass walls. Now, the blinds were drawn, and the room felt claustrophobic, filled with the scent of damp carpet and old paper. The folder sat open in front of him, its contents a quiet bomb, contracts, signatures, and the letterhead of the corporation's lawyers. The injunction was real. The former owner, Howard Langley, a man whose name still hung on the dealership's plaques, claimed the sale violated a confidential clause, one Michael's team had missed during acquisition. It was a technical trap, buried deep in the legalese, designed to keep control even after selling. Michael rubbed his temples, feeling that old familiar rhythm of anger tapping in his chest. Not the kind that lashes out, but the kind that sharpens. Outside the office window, employees moved quietly, pretending to work. He could feel their eyes flick toward the door, curiosity feeding off gossip. On social media, The clip of the confrontation had already crossed 5 million views. Comment sections flooded with outrage. They threw out the owner? Racist dealership gets exposed. Michael B. Jordan humiliates arrogant staff. But behind the applause, a new narrative was starting to form, one whispered by anonymous corporate accounts. Ownership claim under dispute. Maybe he's not the real owner after all. That was how reputations died in the digital age, not with truth, but with doubt. And Michael knew it. He stood, buttoned his jacket, and stepped out of the office. The air in the showroom was brittle. Todd was pretending to polish a display car, eyes darting up and away as Michael passed. Lester, the guard, was gone, escorted out last night, but the echo of his slur still hung in the air. Only Eli, the young intern, looked up with something close to respect. "You good, sir?" he asked quietly. Michael gave a small nod. "Not yet," he said, "but we will be." He walked to the center of the floor, pulled out his phone, and made a call. "Get Camille," he said into the receiver. "I want every document from that acquisition cross-checked, line by line. If Langley's got a clause, I want to know who wrote it." He hung up. Minutes later, the corporate lawyer, Richard Carver, approached again, the same man who'd brought the storm yesterday. His expression was smug, his voice rehearsed. "Mr. Jordan, we're requesting you vacate the premises until ownership is resolved." Standard legal precaution. Michael studied him, eyes narrowing. "You think I'm walking out twice?" Carver adjusted his glasses. "I think it's in everyone's best interest to avoid escalation." "You already escalated it," Michael said softly, "when you let this place treat people like dirt." Carver smirked. "This isn't about morals, Mr. Jordan. It's about paperwork." Michael stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Then maybe you should have read the paperwork better." He turned to Eli. "Call the press back. They wanted an interview." Carver's smile faltered. "Excuse me?" Michael looked him dead in the eye. "If they're gonna tell a story, we might as well make sure they hear the truth." By noon, 3 news vans were parked outside, cameras pointed toward the dealership's glass doors. Reporters huddled under umbrellas as the drizzle thickened into rain again. Inside, employees whispered nervously. Michael stood in front of the crowd, his voice calm but steady as thunder rolled in the distance. "Yesterday, I was told I didn't belong here," he began. "That I couldn't afford the car I wanted. That's what people do when they think they know your worth. But I learned something. The only people who ever doubt you are the ones too scared to face what you might become." The reporters leaned forward, microphones out. "Mr. Jordan," one asked, "what about the ownership dispute? Is it true the sale was invalid?" Michael's jaw tightened. "There's an old trick," he said, "where people hide behind contracts to keep power. They write rules they never intend to follow, not to protect fairness, but to protect themselves." He paused, looking straight into the cameras. "We're gonna see how that works out for them." The footage aired by evening, and the effect was immediate. Online, the narrative flipped again, from doubt to fury. Thousands of comments flooded in. "They're trying to steal it back." "Expose the old owner." "Stand with Michael." The hashtag he owns it began trending overnight. But behind the screens, the real war began, one fought with lawyers, documents, and time. Camille, his legal partner, arrived from Atlanta the next morning. She was sharp, calm, and ruthless when she needed to be. "They're bluffing," she said, flipping through the pages. "That clause was meant to scare off smaller buyers. It says any transfer requires board approval, but Langley dissolved the board 2 years ago. He can't invoke a rule that doesn't exist anymore." Michael exhaled slowly. "So we're clear?" Camille nodded. "We're clear. We just need to make it official before they twist it." That same afternoon, Carver arrived again, this time with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Jordan, Langley's filing a motion to freeze all business operations until this is resolved. That includes payroll, sales, even online transactions. Michael didn't blink. He's playing defense. Camille muttered beside him. Desperate move. Carver raised an eyebrow. You'll need to close your doors until further notice. Michael stepped forward. You tell Langley something for me, he said, his tone quiet, surgical. You can freeze the sales. You can hold the keys. But you can't stop the truth from spreading. That night, Michael posted a video from the dealership floor. The lighting was low, the sound of rain tapping softly against the glass. He spoke straight into the camera, no script, no PR polish. They said I didn't belong here. They said this place wasn't mine. Maybe they're right. Maybe I don't belong in a world where worth is measured by assumptions and suits. But I'll tell you what I do belong to. The people who've ever been told they weren't enough. I see you. And we're not done yet. The video hit 10 million views overnight. Reporters camped outside Hudson Motors by morning. Protesters began showing up, not the loud kind, but families, students, workers holding cardboard signs. Respect over power, we stand with Michael, dignity isn't for sale. Inside, Todd and the remaining staff watched with wide eyes as the dealership transformed from a scandal to a symbol. Eli walked beside Michael through the chaos, his voice low. Sir, you think they'll back down? Michael looked toward the horizon where storm clouds gathered again. They already have, he said, but he didn't know how wrong he was. By Friday, Camille burst into the office holding her phone. They leaked your personal info, she said. Langley's people. They're trying to spin it, calling this a publicity stunt. Michael's stomach turned, but his expression didn't change. Let them. They're saying you used your influence to bully small businesses, she added. They even edited the security footage. The clip on TV showed Michael confronting Todd, but they cut the context, removing the slurs, twisting it into aggression. The voiceover said, Actor Michael B. Jordan storms into dealership, firing employees. Michael watched silently. They're scared, he murmured. When truth starts burning, liars look for shade. The backlash grew fast. Fake news stories, twisted headlines. But so did the support. One local reporter, a young woman named Rosa, reached out privately. I have footage from another angle, she said. A customer recorded the whole thing. The truth. That night, Michael met her in a parking garage downtown. The rain poured so hard it sounded like static. Rosa handed him a flash drive. Be careful, she said. Langley's got friends everywhere. He thanked her and drove back through the empty streets. Inside the dealership, the lights glowed dimly through fog glass. He plugged the drive into his laptop. The footage showed everything, the laughter, the slur, the silence. Unedited. Raw. Proof. Michael leaned back, exhaling. We end it tomorrow. At dawn, they went live again. A full press conference streamed worldwide. Reporters packed the lot. Langley's lawyers stood stiff on one side, their arrogance cracking under the weight of cameras. Michael took the podium, the flash drive in his hand. Yesterday, they said I faked it, he began. They said I made it up for attention. Let's see who's lying. He played the footage. The air turned electric. Every insult, every word, every sneer echoed through the speakers. Silence followed, the kind that feels heavier than sound. Langley's team tried to speak, but the crowd erupted. Within hours, his injunction was dropped. Within days, his reputation crumbled. The corporation issued a statement. Hudson Motors fully acknowledges Michael B. Jordan as rightful owner. Employees resigned. Todd vanished. Lester was seen apologizing on local TV, tears in his eyes, saying he'd learned his lesson. But Michael didn't celebrate. He stood outside as the sun finally broke through the clouds, the air smelling of wet metal and redemption. Eli approached quietly. "It's over, sir," he said. Michael shook his head. "No, it's just starting." "What do you mean?" "We're turning this place into something better." Over the next month, Hudson Motors transformed. Michael rebranded it as Unity Auto Group, a dealership that prioritized community hires, apprenticeships, and ethical sales. The story became national news, not just about revenge, but renewal. People drove from other states to see the place where a man stood his ground. But behind all the noise, Michael kept one photo on his office wall, his father's hands on a beat-up steering wheel, grease-stained and proud. One evening, after the final renovation, Michael sat alone in the showroom. The glass reflected the sunset now, not the rain. He could still hear echoes of that first day, the laughter, the humiliation, but they no longer hurt. They become something else, fuel. Camille walked in, holding a framed certificate of ownership. "Officially yours now," she said, setting it on the desk. Michael smiled faintly. "No," he said softly. "It's ours." Outside, customers browsed, families laughed, kids pointed at cars. The sound was no longer mocking, it was life. The same guard booth where Lester once stood now held a new employee, a young woman from a local shelter, smiling as she waved people in. Eli managed the floor with quiet confidence, his nameplate shining. Rosa's report won an award for integrity in journalism. And Michael? He stayed out of the spotlight. One morning, a reporter tried to ask him what kept him going through it all. He paused, looking toward the horizon where sunlight met the rain. "When they called me poor," he said, "they didn't mean money. They meant power. But real power isn't in owning things, it's in owning your story." The reporter nodded. "And what would you say to the people who still doubt you?" Michael smiled, slow and steady. "They don't have to believe me," he said. "They just have to drive by and see the sign." Behind him, the golden letters gleamed across the lot. Unity Auto Group, built with respect. That night, as the city quieted, Michael locked up the showroom himself. The rain returned, soft this time, cleansing. He stood under the awning, breathing in the scent of oil and asphalt, the sound of tires hissing down wet streets. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled again, but it wasn't a threat anymore. It was a promise. He thought of his father, of every lesson, every scar, every time he'd been told to wait for justice. And now, finally, he whispered the words that ended the story the way it began. "I told them I'd come back when the time was right." He looked out at the horizon, the neon sign glowing like a heartbeat in the mist, and walked into the rain, not to fight anymore, but to build. Moral: don't judge by appearance, and don't answer cruelty with rage. Power isn't proven by revenge, it's proven by rebuilding. When they call you less, remember, someday they'll have to face the man who never gave up. If this story moved you, hit subscribe, because respect, once earned, should be shared.